family harmony collapsed in an instant when the husband came home with his mother's suitcases. "That's it. Mom is moving in. I'm sick of eating your slop," he said. His words sounded like a verdict for his wife, who for years had tried to please everyone in the household. The decision was made without discussion, but the woman had no intention of silently enduring such humiliation. Hello, dear listeners. This is Andre Belli, and you're on the Kindred Souls channel. I present to you my new original story. Enjoy listening. Olga was standing at the stove, stirring borscht, when she heard the familiar sound of keys turning in the lock. Her husband had returned from work earlier than usual, and by his heavy footsteps in the hallway, she immediately understood that Igor was in a bad mood. After 3 years of marriage, she had learned to sense his emotional state even before he crossed the kitchen threshold. "Hi," she said without turning around. "Dinner is almost ready." Igor walked silently to the fridge, took out a beer, and slammed the door shut. Olga tensed. That gesture always signaled an unpleasant conversation. "Mom complained again about being lonely," he muttered, opening the bottle. "She says it's hard for her to live alone in her apartment." Olga kept stirring the borscht, feeling her back stiffen. Her mother-in-law, Ludmila Stanislavovna, lived in her own 2-room apartment in a nearby district, but for the past 6 months she had increasingly hinted that it would be nice to move in with the young couple, especially after she learned that Olga had inherited a 3-room apartment in the city center from her grandmother. "Igor, we've already discussed this," Olga said quietly. "Your mother has her own apartment, her own habits. We don't even have children yet. There's space only for the 2 of us." "Only for 2? Igor slammed the bottle on the table so hard that beer spilled onto the tablecloth. "3 rooms for 2 people is too little, but my mother should rot in her 40 square meters?" Olga finally turned around. Her husband's face was red, his eyes shimmering with irritation. She had seen that look every time the conversation turned to his mother. Igor idolized Ludmila Stanislavovna, who had raised him alone after divorcing his father, and he could never refuse her anything. "My mother won't rot," Olga replied carefully. "She has a good apartment, a pension, friends nearby. Why should she change her settled life?" "Because she's my mother," Igor exploded, "and if her son can provide her with better conditions, he must do it." Olga felt a familiar sense of helplessness flare up in her chest. Every conversation about her mother-in-law turned into a one-sided lecture about filial duty. Igor never once asked his wife's opinion, or considered how their life would change with another person in the house. "Fine," she said, turning off the stove. "Let's discuss this calmly. But keep in mind that this is my apartment, inherited from my grandmother, and I have a right to a say as well." Igor's face darkened. He hated it when his wife reminded him that the apartment belonged to her. "Yours?" he hissed. "Aren't we a family, or do you consider me a temporary tenant?" "Don't twist my words. I just want decisions to be made by both of us, not only by you." Igor finished his beer in one gulp and threw the bottle toward the trash can. He missed, and the bottle crashed onto the floor. "You know what?" he said, heading out of the kitchen. "I'm tired of asking for permission. Mom is moving in. Period. And if you don't like it, you can look for another place to live." The door slammed, leaving Olga alone with the borscht she no longer wanted to eat. The next day, while Olga was at work, Igor carried out his threat. When she returned home in the evening, she found 3 large bags and 2 suitcases in the hallway. Ludmila Stanislavovna was sitting in the kitchen, drinking tea from the best porcelain set and surveying the apartment with an appraising look. "Oh, Olga, you're home," she said without even getting up. "Igor told me that you finally agreed to take me in. Very nice of you." Olga stood in the kitchen doorway, feeling like a guest in her own home. Igor avoided her gaze, fussily putting dinner on plates. "I put my things in the middle room," her mother-in-law continued. "The lighting is better there, and the size suits my furniture." Olga asked, "What furniture?" "Well, I can't live without my things, dear. Tomorrow they'll bring my wardrobe, dresser, and armchair, and Igor already moved your furniture from that room into the storage closet." Olga felt her fists clench. The middle room was her favorite. She had set up a workshop there for her crafts. Now all her belongings were piled in the closet among the vacuum cleaner and mops. "Igor," she said quietly, "can we talk?" Reluctantly, he followed her into the bedroom. As soon as the door closed, Olga couldn't hold back anymore. "Are you out of your mind? You brought your mother without my consent, threw out my things, didn't even warn me?" "I told you she would move in," Igor shrugged. "You just didn't take it seriously." "That was an ultimatum, not a discussion. The main thing is that my mother won't suffer alone anymore." Olga sat down on the bed, her legs trembling. She realized that her husband had made this decision long ago, and yesterday's conversation was just a formality. "So what now? I'm supposed to accept that another woman is running my house?" "Our house," Igor corrected. "And she's not running it, she's living here. By the way, Mom already complained about your cooking. She said yesterday's borscht was too salty. She didn't even thank me for dinner." "And what's there to thank you for? Cooking for the family is your duty." Olga stared at her husband, unable to believe her ears. Over 3 years of marriage, Igor had turned from a loving man into an obedient son who put his mother's opinion above his wife's interests. The following days became a real ordeal for Olga. Ludmila Stanislavna behaved like the full mistress of the house, rearranging furniture, criticizing Olga's cleaning, changing their daily routine. Every morning she greeted Olga with remarks about the coffee being too strong, the bread not fresh enough, or her work clothes being inappropriate. "Igor has always loved semolina porridge in the mornings," her mother-in-law declared on the third day. "Not those cheese sandwiches of yours." "Igor never complained about breakfasts," Olga objected. "He's just polite, but I'm his mother, I know what he likes." Igor obediently ate the semolina porridge, even though just a week earlier he had said he hated it since childhood. That evening the conflict reached its peak. Olga was cooking dinner when Ludmila Stanislavna walked into the kitchen with a displeased expression. "What's that smell?" She wrinkled her nose. "I'm stewing chicken with vegetables." "Ugh, disgusting." Igor has hated stewed meat since childhood. It upsets his stomach. "That's strange. He's eaten it many times and never complained." "That's because he's well-mannered, unlike some people." She opened the fridge and started rummaging inside. "Make cutlets instead. There's meat and onions. I've already started cooking the chicken. So throw that slop away and make proper food." That was the last straw. "If you don't like my cooking," Olga said slowly, turning off the stove, "cook for yourself." "What?" her mother-in-law gasped. "Should I serve myself in my son's house?" "In my house," Olga corrected. "And if nothing suits you, no one is forcing you to stay." At that moment, Igor entered the kitchen. "What happened?" he asked cautiously. "Your wife is throwing me out," Ludmila Stanislavna sobbed, instantly transforming into an offended old woman. "She says I don't belong here." "I didn't say that," Olga replied tiredly. "I said that if everything here is so bad for you, you can go back to your apartment." Igor looked at his wife as if she had suggested throwing his mother out onto the street. "How can you, Olga? Mom just moved in, she's getting used to the new place, and you're already making scandals." "I'm making scandals? Your mother has been criticizing my every move for 3 days. She just wants to help you become a better housewife." That's when Igor exploded. "That's it. Mom is moving in. I'm sick of eating your slop." Olga looked at him silently, no longer recognizing the man she had married. That night, she made a decision. The next morning, while Igor and his mother were having breakfast, Olga quietly packed her things. Only the essentials: documents, jewelry. Before leaving, she placed a note on the table in the hallway. "Igor, since you're tired of my cooking, you won't have to eat it anymore. The apartment belongs to me by right of inheritance. You have 3 days to move out together with your mother. Divorce papers will be sent by mail." Next to the note lay the apartment keys and a small gift: 3 cans of the cheapest canned meat from the nearest store. Each can had a note taped to it: "So you don't starve." Olga moved in with a friend and filed for divorce 2 days later. She never regretted that decision. This was her dignified exit from an undignified situation.